Good evening, ladies as well as gentlemen. I'm Papa Boris, and in this video I'm going to do a character spotlight on Asharra, the bird wizard in Tales from Candlekeep, Tomb of Annihilation. This is, in my opinion, the second worst of the 4 starting characters in the game, which is sad for me to say because I love mages in games, and it sucks that the mage is kind of underwhelming in this one, but that's what it is. She's got a really fast speed because she flies, and her special ability that she can pass through enemies and can pass through traps. The only catch, of course, being that if she ends her turn on a trap, then she does trigger the trap. So this is somewhat limited in usefulness. Definitely the passing through enemies part is not that useful. It is very, very rare that that is actually relevant. So her special ability is definitely bottom tier. But she is fast. She has low hit points, the worst armor class of all the characters. She's, fragile, as you'd expect a mage to be. And, it looks cool when she flies. So, there's that. I'm not actually going to play this mission. Let's go into it so we can see her powers. Now, Asharra has Acid Splash for her trait. The traits are the at-wills that you're not allowed to deselect, and that's fine because this is one that you're going to be using 99.999% of the time. It's got a pretty high attack roll, 8 is pretty good, deals the standard 1 damage, and in addition, a monster that is adjacent to the monster you're targeting will also be attacked. Not all the monsters adjacent to your primary target, just one. And as far as I can tell, you don't get to choose. So if you do attack a monster that is next to 2 other monsters, I suppose it will be chosen at random which one of those other 2 gets attacked. I find that rather bizarre because I'm sure in the board game you'd get to choose, but not in this one. Note that the extra attack is not contingent on hitting, which is extremely significant. So if you've got 2 monsters that are next to each other, both of them will get attacked by Acid Splash, period, and a die roll will be rolled for each one of them separately. As you upgrade this, of course, that can be really nice. So for example, with a +2 weapon, which you should try to get as soon as possible, you've got a 10 attack bonus and you deal 3 damage, and that can hit 2 monsters. The only problem is that it's not that likely that monsters actually end up adjacent to each other, because in this game, like I talked about in the tutorial video, you don't really get into long, drawn-out Mexican standoff kind of things. It's a pretty fast pace, you move along, you are always exploring new tiles, and monsters are dropping left and right, or they should be if you know what the hell you're doing, and if you're not, taking on a scenario that's too difficult. So, it's not actually that likely to happen, but when it does, you get to kill an extra monster, it's definitely nice. Now, the other options are both terrible. So, Chromatic Orb has just an abysmal attack bonus, and the catch is that it deals 2 damage, which is very, 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 very rare. In fact, it's the only at-will in the game that just straight up does 2 damage. So that's cool, but the problem is that it is significantly less accurate than the other one. Notice this is a +8 versus +3. That's a difference of 5. That's a whopping 5 numbers out of a d20. It's a full 25% coverage of the die. So you pretty much never want to use this because you're not that likely to hit anything with it, and when you miss, you're just going to feel bad because you're like, well, I wish I would have at least done 1 damage with Acid Splash, So it's pretty bad. However, I'm still going to pick it because the other one is just so much worse. Witch Bolt is awful. It has a lower attack bonus than Acid Splash. In fact, it's 2 lower, so it's a 10% span of a 20-sided die. It does 1 damage, and then the idea is that if you hit a monster with it, then the next turn you can use Witch Bolt and you're guaranteed to hit the monster. That sounds good, but here's the problem. First of all, this is really only ever going to work on villains, because like I said, monsters just don't stick around very long in this game. The other problem is that if you miss, the witchiness does not apply, which is just so stupid to me. I mean, if this were a power that applied the witchiness, which I'm calling it, to the monster regardless of whether hit or miss, so like if you missed the monster the first time, at least you're guaranteed to hit it the second time, maybe I would sometimes use this, maybe. But if I have to hit in order to apply the witchiness, no way. Because anytime I miss with Witch Bolt, it's like, well, damn it, I wish I would have just used the Acid Splash and maybe actually hit the monster and did damage. So you never, like, you can take this with you. You are never going to use this. It is like 100% of the time a mistake to use this power. Oh yeah, I said at the beginning that it's good with villains, like it only ever could work on villains. Well, even against a villain, it's so important to get damage into it. I'm not willing to sacrifice +2 accuracy on my chance of dealing damage to the villain in exchange for maybe getting a guaranteed hit on the villain next round. So it's just so bad. Like, you can take it and you're never going to use it. I'm pretty sure it is a mistake to use this close to 100% of the time. So you take Chromatic Orb if you're just feeling frisky sometimes, but really just you're going to be doing Acid Splash the whole time. And that really upsets me, because one of the great things about mages is they get to do cool stuff that other people don't get to do. And they should have options and be flexible, and Asharra isn't, because it's just pretty much 100% of the time correct to use Acid Splash. So, okay, that's sad. As far as the utilities go, she does get some decent ones. So you got your web. What this does is webs all the monsters within a tile. The gimmick, of course, with web, like I've talked about many times before, is that monsters don't stick around very long. So unlike regular D&D, in which a free action AoE web would be incredible, because you could freeze some monsters in place and, you know, work on other monsters, essentially depriving monsters of the ability to attack you. And the fact that they can't move for 3 whole turns is a massive amount of time. But in this game, you know, those monsters should be dead by then anyway. So it's very limited, but at the same time, you know, occasionally if you do get overwhelmed, webbing something and then not having to worry about it for a few turns is fine. Just make sure that you use this liberally, don't save it, because there's never going to be like that good of a time for it. Then we got Haste. Now, Haste is probably the best utility power in the game. What this does is it lets a character attack twice. It can be either Asharra or someone else on her tile. And it's almost strictly better than Artus's Lightning Reflexes, which I talked about in the previous video. I said this was a great utility because it lets them attack twice. Well, Haste doesn't apply disadvantage, can be used on someone else, and can be used for dailies. It doesn't have to be used on at-wills. So it's almost strictly better. The only catch is that if you're casting Haste on someone more than once, it doesn't do anything, whereas Artus can, in theory, use the Lightning Reflexes more than once in a turn. But other than that, this is just a better version of a utility power that's already really good. So definitely take that with you. And then there's Mage Power, which is garbage. This thing is absolutely shit-awful terrible. So you get a +1 bonus to armor class, and if you upgrade Asharra's accessories, then this increases. So if you get like the +2 accessory, this becomes a +3 bonus to armor class. Don't get me wrong, that's significant. But this thing is removed if you're ever attacked by someone with an attack roll of 7 or higher. And that includes attack rolls from, you know, like traps and encounters and things. So it's awful. You're going to get attacked a lot. It's not that hard to get hit by a 17 or higher. That's 4 numbers on a 20-sided die. So it's a 20% chance every single time you're attacked that it goes away. It's gonna happen, and then congratulations, you wasted your utility. You got nothing out of it, and you forwent one of 2 decent utilities. So I don't recommend using this. If it didn't have this byline, or if it was at least like 19 or higher, then I would use it, because, you know, a +2, +3 bonus to armor class is significant, and it does increase the health of your party, but the fact that it breaks just pisses me off, because it makes what otherwise would have been a good utility power, and then, you know, made it an honestly difficult choice of which 2 powers to take. Instead, you know, it's just garbage and you can ignore it. Now let's talk about dailies. So dailies with Asharra are also something of a disappointment, because you got one good one and the rest suck. The good one is Fire Shield. Now what this power doesn't say is that Fire Shield blocks all of the damage. You're surrounded by 4 fiery shields, and every time a monster hits you with a melee attack, all of the damage is blocked, and the monster takes 1 damage. This would be an amazing daily power, even if it weren't for the dealing of the 1 damage. At early levels, you actually will kill monsters with this. Later in the game, you know, the 1 damage might not matter. But being able to block 4 melee attacks in a game where, like, nearly all of the monsters do exclusively melee attacks is incredible. It improves this character's survivability, and also it improves the survivability of the whole party, because in this game, your party shares the healing surges. So you pretty much are going to take this 100% of the time. And the only other power that could possibly compete is Scorching Ray. This essentially gives you 3 shots of a standard +7 attack, 1 damage power. And that can be a lot of damage if you have your secondary weapon upgraded. For example, if you have the +2 secondary weapons, so that daily powers deal +2 damage, this is 3 attacks that are at +9 attack and 3 damage apiece. That can be a total of 9 damage, which is a lot. Problem is, it's still not good enough. I tried it in my other game, and I was, even in scenarios where I got off a good Scorching Ray, it was still, like, I would still lose, and I would still just regret not having Fire Shield to just frickin' block for attacks. And the fact that Fire Shield is a free action is just, you know, icing on the cake. Even if this was a standard action and you had to spend your standard action at the beginning of the scenario to put this on, it would still just be freaking amazing. So you're just always going to take Fire Shield. The other ones are not worth it. You got Melf's Acid Arrow, which stuns an enemy, and that's cool, but it's not worth blocking for attacks. And then you got Sleep, which puts monsters to sleep for a few turns, which is cool, except it's not worth giving up for attacks. Sleep is also really bizarre because it does not work on large monsters, it doesn't work on villains, and it's basically the same thing as Web. I mean, yes, obviously, villains that can, like, shoot at range aren't that affected by being webbed, but then again, you can't target them with Sleep either. So this thing is worse, pretty much, than a utility, which is a free action and not a standard action, and it doesn't take up your daily slot, and the web also works on large monsters. So the Sleep is just unbelievably, horribly bad. And so yeah, you're just taking Fire Shield all the time. You know, feel free to argue with me if you want to make a case for some of these dailies, but it's Fire Shield all the way for Asharra. And the other disappointment about Asharra is what happens when you look at her crafted items. So main weapons, obviously, #1 priority for everybody. Try to get the +2 as soon as possible. The +3 will take a lot longer, but try to get the +2 as soon as possible. Armors, of course, everybody's trying to get the +2 as soon as possible. But secondary weapons, to improve daily powers, you don't need to craft them for Asharra because you're going to be using Fire Shield 100% of the time, and Fire Shield is not affected by this bonus. It does not increase the damage. Even if it did, I'm not sure I would put this at a high priority, but it doesn't. No matter what of these you get, Fire Shield still only deals 1 damage to the monster that hits you. So, yeah, you don't need to craft these. And then accessories, I don't know what the hell was going on when this was designed, but the accessories for Asharra improve her utility powers, but 2 of her 3 utility powers are not affected. And it's the good ones! Haste and Web are not affected. The only thing that gets an actual bonus is Mage Armor, which is garbage because it still breaks when you're attacked by a roll of 17 or higher. So this bonus doesn't make the Mage Armor any more durable, it just makes it more potent, but the problem initially wasn't the potency, it was the durability. So you just don't need to craft accessories or secondary weapons for this character. That's 2 over 4 items. So all in all, kind of a disappointment for a mage. Not really any choices, because there's like one good thing and the rest are bad, sort of a deal with all of the at-will powers and the utilities and the dailies. But, you know, not terrible. Not as terrible as at least one of the other characters, spoiler alert. So thanks for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed that character spotlight. I'll be back to do the other 2 shortly, and I hope to see you soon. Please like and or subscribe, and take care, everybody.